The human pulled his shirt over his head, and Princess Vaelith felt the wineglass slip from her fingers. It shattered against the marble floor, but she couldn't look away. Couldn't process what she was seeing. His back was a landscape of violence. Ridged scars that crawled across his skin like pale rivers through burned earth. Puckered holes where something had torn through muscle. A long diagonal slash that ran from his right shoulder blade to his left hip. "Your Highness?" The human, Sergeant Cole, her newly assigned bodyguard, turned his head slightly, his expression unreadable. "Is something wrong?" "Wrong? She had lived for 243 cycles. She had studied 17 languages, mastered diplomatic protocols of 38 species, and been groomed since birth to one day sit on the crystal throne of Valoria. But nothing had prepared her for this. "What? We?" Her voice came out as a whisper. She cleared her throat, forcing the royal composure she'd been trained to maintain. "What happened to you?" Cole looked down at himself, then back at her. For a moment, something flickered in his dark eyes. Was it shame? No, it was something else. Something she couldn't identify. "Velkor Prime," he said simply. He pulled a fresh undershirt from his pack. The siege. 14 months. She knew of Velkor Prime. Everyone in the Galactic Concord knew of Velkor Prime. The bloodiest ground campaign in 3 centuries. The mission that broke the Kreth offensive and saved 62 billion lives across 14 systems. She had read the reports, celebrated the victory, attended the memorial ceremonies in flowing white gowns, placing ceremonial flowers before holographic walls of names. But she had never seen what it actually meant. "How are you alive?" The question escaped before she could stop it. Rude, indelicate. Everything a princess shouldn't be. Cole's lips twitched, not quite a smile. He pulled the undershirt over his head, hiding the evidence. Luck, mostly. Stubbornness. Good medics. He reached for his uniform jacket. "I apologize if I made you uncomfortable, Your Highness. The quarters are small. I assumed you'd be in your chambers. I came for water," she heard herself say. I couldn't sleep." He nodded, fastening his jacket. The scars were hidden now, but she could still see them. Would always see them, she realized. Burned into her memory like a brand. "Shall I escort you back to your room?" She should say yes. She should return to her silk sheets and climate-controlled air and pretend this never happened. That was what a princess did. Maintained distance. Preserved decorum. "That one," she said instead, pointing to his left arm where his sleeve had ridden up, revealing another scar. A perfect circle of raised tissue. "What caused that?" Cole glanced down at it. "Plasma round. Went clean through." He said it the way someone might describe a minor inconvenience. A delayed transport. A cold dinner. Did it hurt? "Everything hurts during a war, Your Highness." Vaelith had never experienced true pain. Her species healed quickly. Their medical technology erased imperfections before they could set. The small scrape she'd gotten as a child, falling in the palace gardens, had vanished within hours. She had no marks. No evidence of a life lived. Looking at this human, this walking testament to survival, she felt something she'd never felt before. Inadequate. "You should rest, Your Highness," Cole said. His voice was not unkind, but it carried the firmness of someone accustomed to giving orders. "We have a long journey tomorrow." She nodded but didn't move. "Sergeant Cole, yes? Do they bother you? The scars?" He considered the question longer than she expected. "They remind me I'm alive when others aren't. That has to mean something." He paused. "Whether it bothers me depends on the day." She had 1,000 more questions. They crowded her throat, demanding answers. But Cole was already turning away, dismissing her with the efficient economy of a soldier ending a briefing. Vaelith returned to her chambers on silent feet. She lay in her bed, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in her life, felt the weight of her own unmarked skin. It felt like a lie. 3 weeks into the journey, Vaelith found herself making excuses. She needed to review the security protocols in the common area, where Cole typically maintained his equipment. She required a second opinion on diplomatic correspondence, and who better than someone who dealt with Kreth aggression firsthand? She couldn't sleep, so naturally she wandered the ship's corridors, inevitably ending up wherever he happened to be. Cole, for his part, maintained perfect professional distance. "Yes, Your Highness." "No, Your Highness. The Kreth favor frontal assaults. They consider flanking dishonorable. The water on Velkor Prime was contaminated by the 3rd month. We learned to filter it through charcoal and prayer." He answered her questions with the same flat efficiency he applied to everything. No emotion. No elaboration. Just facts, delivered like ammunition. It was maddening. You're staring again, Your Highness. Vaelith blinked. They were in the mess hall. She'd invented a reason to take her evening meal there instead of her private quarters. Cole sat across from her, methodically consuming something brown and unappazing from a military ration pack. I was thinking, she said. About. She set down her utensil, a delicate silver fork that looked absurdly out of place on the utilitarian table. On Valoria, soldiers are different. How so? They're ceremonial, mostly. Our last actual conflict was 400 cycles ago. We have a standing military, but it's largely symbolic. Honor guards. Parade formations. She gestured vaguely. They wear beautiful armor. They learn traditional combat forms that haven't been used in centuries. Cole chewed, swallowed. Sounds peaceful. It sounds useless. The word came out sharper than she intended. When the Kreth threatened our shipping lanes, we had to hire human mercenaries because our own forces couldn't. She stopped, suddenly aware of what she was saying, to whom she was saying it. Cole's expression didn't change. That's why I'm here, Your Highness. Hired protection. That's not what I meant. It's not inaccurate. She felt heat rise to her cheeks, a physiological response her species shared with humans, much to her current dismay. I meant that we've become soft, dependent. We've had peace for so long we've forgotten what it costs. Cole set down his ration pack. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked at her. Really looked, not the careful, distant assessment of a bodyguard scanning for threats, but something deeper. Peace isn't weakness, Your Highness. It's what people like me fight for. So people like you never have to see what we've seen. But I want to understand. No, die. His voice was quiet but absolute. You don't. The silence stretched between them. Vaelith should have been offended. A princess, told no. Denied something she'd requested? The protocol violations alone. Why not? She asked instead. Cole stood, gathering his meal's remains. Because understanding requires experience. And some experiences. He paused at the doorway, not looking back. Some experiences take pieces of you that don't grow back. Your Highness. He left. Vaelith sat alone in the empty mess hall, surrounded by the hum of the ship's engines, and realized she wasn't frustrated anymore. She was determined. The next morning, she found him in the cargo bay, running combat drills against a holographic opponent. She watched from the doorway as he moved. Economical, brutal, nothing like the elegant forms she'd been taught to admire. He fought like violence was a language he'd been forced to learn, every motion carrying the weight of necessity rather than artistry. The hologram scored a hit. Cole grunted, adjusted, and swept its legs. You leave openings on your left side, Vaelith said. He didn't startle. She doubted anything startled him anymore. But he did pause the simulation, turning to face her. Sweat darkened his shirt. She could see the outline of scars beneath the damp fabric. I'm aware. Old injury, nerve damage. Can't fully compensate. He grabbed a towel, wiping his face. Shouldn't you be preparing for the diplomatic summit? I've been preparing for diplomatic summits my entire life. She stepped into the cargo bay, her formal robes trailing behind her like a silver tide. Show you what? How you fight. How humans fight. She met his eyes, refusing to look away. Not the theory, the reality. Cole was silent for a long moment. Then he tossed her the towel. Change into something you can move in. Those robes will get you killed. She smiled, the first genuine smile she'd felt in weeks. Is that an order, Sergeant? It's a statement of fact, Your Highness. 20 minutes later, Vaelith lay flat on her back on the cargo bay floor, staring at the ceiling, every muscle screaming in protest. Cole stood over her, not even breathing hard. You dropped your guard. You threw me. Because you dropped your guard. He extended a hand. She took it, allowing him to pull her up. His palm was rough with calluses, a texture utterly foreign to her, strangely compelling. Again. They drilled for an hour. He corrected her stance, her grip, her footwork, always professional. But she noticed he was more careful when he touched her than when he touched the holographic controls. As if she might break. Harder, she said after he'd pulled another throw. You're holding back. You're a princess. I'm also asking you to train me, properly. She straightened, pushing sweat-dampened hair from her face. If you coddle me, I learn nothing. Cole studied her. That assessing look again. But warmer now, she thought. Or maybe she was imagining it. Fine, he said. Again. And this time when I sweep your legs, tuck your chin or you'll crack your skull. She did crack her head. Not badly. but enough to see stars. Cole was beside her instantly, hands surprisingly gentle as he checked her pupils, the back of her skull. I told you to tuck your chin. I was focusing on my guard. Your guard won't matter if you're unconscious. She laughed, a sound that surprised them both. Then I suppose I need more practice. Cole's hands were still on her face, cradling her head. He seemed to realize this at the same moment she did. He pulled back, the professional mask slamming down. Tomorrow, he said. Same time. If you're serious. I'm always serious, Sergeant. He almost smiled. She saw it, the ghost of expression crossing his face before he suppressed it. It felt like victory. The summit was a disaster. Not publicly. Publicly, everything proceeded according to protocol. Princess Vaelith of Veloria greeted the assembled delegates with appropriate grace. She delivered her prepared remarks flawlessly. She smiled and charmed and did everything expected of her. But Vaelith saw what others didn't. The sideways glances when the human delegation entered. The subtle tension when Cole took his position at her shoulder. The whispered comments that her enhanced hearing caught despite their attempts at discretion. Hired a human bodyguard? How desperate. Barbaric species, really. Useful in war, but at a peace summit, Veloria must be weaker than we thought. She maintained her composure through 7 hours of negotiations. She smiled until her face ached. And when the final session ended, she retreated to her quarters, dismissed her attendants, and systematically destroyed a very expensive vase against the wall. Your Highness. Cole appeared in the doorway, weapon drawn, having apparently heard the crash and assumed an attack. He took in the scene, the shattered porcelain, her trembling hands, the tears she couldn't quite suppress, and holstered his sidearm without comment. I'm fine, she said. You're bleeding. She looked down. A shard had caught her palm. Silver blood, Vaelorian blood, dripped onto the carpet. Before she could react, Cole was there, pulling a field kit from his belt, taking her hand in his. His movements were efficient, practiced. How many wounds had he treated, she wondered, on battlefields far from any medical facility? It's shallow, he said. Won't even scar. We don't scar. The words came out bitter. We heal too quickly. Nothing marks us. Nothing. Nothing proves we've lived. Cole's hand stilled on the bandage. You're upset about the delegates. How did you? Enhanced hearing isn't exclusive to Velorians. My species just learned to hide our capabilities. He finished wrapping her palm. I heard what they said. Does it bother you? What they think of humans? I've heard worse. He released her hand, but didn't step back. Usually from humans. How can you stand it? Being seen as a weapon. He shrugged. Because sometimes that's what people need. A weapon. And I'd rather be useful than respected. Vaelith stared at him. This man who'd been broken and reformed so many times, who carried his damage openly, who accepted his role with neither pride nor shame. May I see them? She asked. Your scars. Properly, not by accident. It was an enormous breach of protocol. She was asking to see him, truly see him, in a way that royalty didn't ask of servants, in a way that implied equality, intimacy. Cole's jaw tightened. Why? Because they called you barbaric, brutal, less than. She stepped closer. And I want to understand what you survived to become the man standing in front of me. The man who's protected me for 6 weeks without asking for acknowledgement, who's trained me without condescension, who's treated me like a person instead of a position. You are a position, Your Highness. I'm not supposed to forget that. Then forget it. Just for tonight. Show me, John. For a long moment, she thought he'd refuse. The professional mask was firmly in place. Sergeant Cole, bodyguard, hired protection. Distant and proper. Then, slowly, he began to unbutton his jacket. He set it aside. Then the undershirt. And Vaelith understood, finally, what war truly meant. His body was a map of survival. The scars she'd glimpsed before were only part of it. There were burns. Chemical, she thought. From the texture. Deep gouges where something had clawed. The reconstructed shoulder that didn't sit quite right. A line of surgical incisions down his sternum where, she knew without asking, someone had opened his chest to keep him alive. 17 major surgeries, Cole said quietly. 63 discreet wounds that required treatment. I lost count of the minor ones. Vaelith raised her hand, then hesitated. May I? He nodded once. She touched the burn scar first. It was smooth, almost waxy, different from the surrounding skin. She traced its edge, feeling him tense beneath her fingertips, then slowly relax. This one, plasma fire, Kreth position we were overrunning. I took the hit so Jenkins could get to cover. Did Jenkins survive? No. But he lived 3 hours longer than he would have. Enough time to record a message for his daughter. She moved to the claw marks. These? Wildlife. Velkor Prime had predators that didn't care about the war. We called them shadow wolves, though they weren't wolves. More like, combine a nightmare with a meat grinder and give it ambush instincts. You fought them off, killed 4. The 5th one got me good before I could reload. A pause. I still see them sometimes, when I sleep. Her hand drifted to the surgical scars. Sternum to navel. And this? Cole was silent for a moment. Shrapnel. Artillery strike. They found me 2 days later, under a collapsed building. My heart had stopped 3 times during the surgery. 3 times. He had died 3 times, and kept coming back. Vaelith pressed her palm flat against his chest. Beneath scarred skin and rebuilt bone, she felt his heart beating. Strong. Steady. Alive. You're beautiful, she whispered. Cole flinched like she'd struck him. Your Highness, Vaelith. She looked up, met his eyes. My name is Vaelith. And you're beautiful. Not despite this. Because of this. Because you survived. Because you keep surviving. Because you carry all of this weight, and still find the strength to be kind. I'm not kind. You are. You don't see it because no one told you. Because your people send you to die, and then look away from the cost. Her voice hardened. Those delegates called you barbaric? They're the barbarians. They take what you offer and pretend they didn't ask for it. Something shifted in Cole's expression. The mask cracked, just slightly. Vaelith. It was the first time he'd used her name. You don't have to carry this alone, she said. I know I'm sheltered, naive. I've never experienced what you have. But I can listen. I can learn. I know. He caught her hand against his chest, held it there. I know. They stood in silence, her palm over his heart, his hand covering hers. Outside, the diplomatic vessel hummed with artificial gravity and recycled air, and 100 delegates who would never understand what it cost to buy their peace. In that moment, none of it mattered. I should go, Cole said finally. But he didn't move. Stay. The words slipped out before she could stop it. Just stay. Please. He stayed. The diplomatic summit concluded with a historic trade agreement. Princess Vaelith of Valoria was credited with negotiating terms favorable to all parties. The human delegation was thanked for their protective services and promptly dismissed from public memory. None of the official records mentioned what happened in the princess's quarters afterward. They were 3 days from Valoria when Cole found her in the observation deck, watching the stars slip past. You've been avoiding me, he said. I've been giving you space. I didn't ask for space. Vaelith turned from the viewport. Cole stood in the doorway, out of uniform for once. Simple clothes that did nothing to hide the scars on his forearms. He'd stopped hiding them around her, she'd noticed. A small thing, but significant. What happens when we reach Valoria? She asked. My contract ends. I'll be reassigned. And if I don't want you reassigned. Cole stepped into the room, the door sliding shut behind him. Then you'll request an extension. Through proper channels. And I'll remain your bodyguard until the next contract ends. That's not what I meant. I know. He stopped an arm's length away. Vaelith. I'm a soldier. A mercenary. My people live fast, and die bloody, and leave nothing but stories. You're going to be a queen someday. There's no version of this that ends well. You don't know that. I know the odds. She closed the distance between them, reaching up to touch his face. He let her. That was something at least. He leaned into her palm just slightly, like a man starving for contact he'd trained himself not to need. I've spent my whole life calculating odds, Vaelith said. Diplomatic odds. Economic odds. The probability that any given decision will benefit my people. And you know what I've learned. What? The odds don't account for everything. They didn't account for the siege of Velkor Prime. They said the humans would lose in 2 weeks. You held for 14 months. She traced the edge of a scar near his temple. They didn't account for you surviving what should have killed you. They didn't account for me meeting someone who made me question everything I thought I knew about strength and weakness. Cole's hand came up to cover hers. This is a bad idea. Probably. Your people won't accept a human consort. Then they'll have to learn. We've been peaceful too long, Sergeant Cole. We've forgotten what it means to fight for something. She smiled. Maybe we need someone to remind us. You're talking about changing centuries of tradition. I'm talking about you and me, standing in a room, deciding what we want. Everything else is just logistics. Cole laughed. A genuine laugh, rough and unused. Logistics. I've invaded planets with simpler logistics than this. But you're not saying no. He was quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, he pulled her closer. Not a grab, not a demand, an invitation, giving her every opportunity to step back if she chose. She didn't step back. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Bodyguard, soldier, killer, those I know. But this? I've never had something worth keeping before. Neither have I. She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. We'll learn together. And when I wake up screaming, when the nightmares come and I don't know where I am, then I'll be there. And I'll remind you. I'm broken, Vaelith. In ways that don't heal. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. You're not broken. You're survived. There's a difference. Her fingers traced the scar on his sternum, the one that marked where they'd cracked him open to save his life. And for the record, I don't want someone undamaged. I spent 200 years surrounded by perfection, and it was empty. Cold. I want someone who knows what it means to lose things and keep going. Someone who can teach me to be stronger than my sheltered upbringing allowed. You're already strong. Then make me stronger. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. Gentleness wasn't in his vocabulary, not really, but it was careful. Deliberate. The kiss of a man who'd learned that precious things required protection, even from himself. She kissed him back with 200 years of unexpressed hunger, all the loneliness of a gilded cage finding release in the arms of someone who understood cages of a different kind. When they finally parted, both breathing hard, Cole's forehead rested against hers. What now? He asked. Now we go to Veloria. I introduce you to my people, not as a bodyguard, but as my chosen partner. There will be opposition. Scandal. Possibly assassination attempts. I'm good at handling assassination attempts. I know. That's one of the things I love about you. He went very still. Love? Vaelith hadn't meant to say it. But now that it was out, she found she didn't want to take it back. Is that a problem? Cole's arms tightened around her. No, he said quietly. No, that's not a problem. They stayed like that, wrapped in each other, watching the stars slide by as the ship carried them toward an uncertain future. Behind them lay the weight of war and trauma. Ahead lay politics and prejudice, and a dozen obstacles that would test them both. But for the first time in either of their lives, they weren't facing it alone. And sometimes, that was enough.